What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Clockwolf. Oh! And welcome to my review for Mark of the Ninja, a 2D action stealth platformer that was published by Microsoft Studios and developed by Klei Entertainment, who have since risen to higher prominence with their more recent titles such as Don't Starve Together. Mark of the Ninja was built on Klei Entertainment's own in-house engine that was created and utilized for their previous two titles, the 2D beat-em-up games Shank and Shank 2. It was released on the 7th of September 2012 for the Xbox 360 and later ported to the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and PC Steam. The version that we will be looking at here today is the remastered version, which includes multiple upgrades to the visuals and audio, as well as the additional DLC content. The following video will avoid spoiling the story, but there will be multiple gameplay spoilers. So if you want to go into this game totally blind, now's your chance to turn back. Mark of the Ninja is built around the idea of making the player feel like a stealthy ninja. Something like that should seem obvious because of the name, but there are plenty of games with the word ninja in the title that don't really do this. Ninja Gaiden is probably the most famous example. The earlier games on Nintendo home consoles and arcade cabinets were 2D action platformers. When the series was revived in the early 2000s, they were made into 3D action hack-and-slash beat-em-ups to compete with the likes of Devil May Cry. Ironically, the most famous ninja in gaming is about as stealthy and subtle as Dante himself. Mark of the Ninja, however, focuses on stealth instead of action. It does a really good job at immersing you in the feeling of being a stealthy ninja, both thematically and mechanically. The player character has no name and no voice dialogue, so I'll just be referring to him as the ninja. The game starts with the ninja waking up after being given a special tattoo. This tattoo is an important part of the game, because the story is pretty much centered around it, and it's used to explain some of the ninja's abilities that the player will be performing. One of the things that's likely to catch the eye of most people when seeing this game for the first time is the art style. The art style for both the cutscenes and the gameplay is reminiscent of a Saturday morning cartoon. Klei's previous games, Shank and Shank 2, had a similar art style. It appears the same artist worked on all three games. When starting up the game proper, the player is dropped into the first level where we're greeted by a female ninja named Aura. Aura has most of the dialogue in the game and is a guide for both the ninja and the player. The level opens up with an area that lets the player take a minute to get used to the controls. It's standard stuff for a stealth game, where you hide in shadows to avoid getting spotted by guards. The way the game handles hiding in shadow is a little different than in most stealth games. Usually, stealth games will have something on the HUD to tell players whether or not they're hidden. Mark of the Ninja has this as well. But on top of that, the developers made it so the ninja's clothes will change color depending on if he's in shadow or light. Doing it this way was a wise decision, because Mark of the Ninja is both a stealth game and a 2D platformer. In 2D platformers like this, making sure the player never loses track of the character they're controlling is absolutely imperative. So having the player character essentially turn invisible by hiding them in darkness wasn't going to cut it. Instead, the artist essentially changed the color of the ninja's clothes to simulate him hiding in shadow or light. Another thing it shows here is how sound alerts enemies. Running as well as other actions will create a noise that will form a circular ripple. If enemies are in the circle, they'll become suspicious and go to investigate the source of the noise. The sound waves will pass through some walls but not others. This makes whether or not it's safe to make noise feel inconsistent, but still very fair. If I'm trying to immerse myself by role-playing as a ninja, then I should be striving to make as little noise as possible at all times. So it's a good thing that the game will punish players for making unnecessary noise. If you're inside a building and you hear a strange noise outside, you would be less likely to care than if you heard one coming from somewhere in the next room. The result is the guards behaving in ways that make logical sense, as well as increasing the challenge. demanding more mindfulness from the player or greater patience, sometimes both. There's some developer commentary in the game that I'll be quoting throughout this video. It seems to imply that figuring out how to get the lighting and sound detection system to work with the tools they had was one of the hardest parts of making Mark of the Ninja. I'm happy they seem to have been able to pull it off in the end. It's easy to tell if you're going to be in light or shadow depending on where you stand. The way enemies will become alerted to your presence if you get spotted or make too much noise feels intuitive and fair. Another thing the game will do to make sure that the player takes it slow and plans out their approach is add what the developers called Fog of War, where a portion of the screen will be blurred out. If you're standing on one side of a closed door, you won't be able to see what's on the other side. This includes guard placements and security measures. But if you lean against the door, you can see what's on the other side. The same thing applies if you're in a room and there's something like a wall in the way. This makes players see the world the way the player character does and encourages them to behave more like a ninja, having the patience to take it slow rather than barreling forward and barging in. There's two different forms of movement, sneaking and running. Sneaking is slow but makes no noise, whereas running is faster and makes noise. You can also climb up walls and crawl on the ceiling in some areas, and the game will allow you to either run or take it slow here too. You'll also get a grappling hook that you can use to zip over to specific anchor points, but grappling onto those anchor points will make a small amount of noise as well, so you need to make sure there aren't any guards close by. Also, you can get spotted if you cross through a guard's line of sight while zipping over to the anchor point, so you have to be careful of that too. So even when you're just moving forward through the levels, there's multiple things to consider. There's also some hiding spots you can duck into. If you hide behind a pot or a dumpster, most enemies can't find you unless they see you enter the hiding spot. And when I say that, I mean enemies will never, ever see you no matter what you do. If you throw things at the guards from a hiding spot, they will run over to the area to investigate, but they will never even bother looking behind the furniture you're hiding behind. The fact that you can hide behind objects like this at all was obviously done as a way to give players more options to avoid getting spotted. They wanted to do that in a way that overcomes the limits of it being a 2D game, while also keeping in with the theme of making the player feel like a ninja. But I don't think it should be impossible for the guards to find you if you're hiding behind a chair or inside a broom closet. You can duck into air vents and guards will search those if they hear a noise, so there's no good reason why they couldn't be programmed to search behind a potted plant. I think what they should have done was make it so that if you throw something at a guard to lure them over, they'll run over and investigate. But if you throw something at that same guard again, they'll search the area even more thoroughly, including your hiding place. It's only a small complaint, but there are multiple things this game does to make the guards feel competent enough, at least as far as stealth game guards go, while also making sure the gameplay feels right. This makes the guards' limits as video game characters more noticeable than any other thing in the game. The only enemy that can find you if you're in a hiding place is dogs. Dogs have a circular radius around them that allows them to sniff you out, even in the darkness. If they smell you, they'll start searching around the area for you. If you're in a hiding place, they'll find you and flush you out. Then they'll alert the guards and attack you. I suspect that the only reason why the dogs can find you if you're hiding is because if they couldn't, then they would just hang out in front of your hiding place forever, trying to use your scent to find you. The game will give you an assortment of gadgets to deal with most problems. You could, in theory, use one of your gadgets to kill the dog, but I imagine having an enemy patrol in front of your hiding spot forever and not being able to move unless you kill them would feel quite cheap. Plus, that's unfair to people who haven't obtained the gadgets yet. The game has an upgrade tree that lets you unlock new techniques, new gear, and new gadgets. The techniques are mostly just things that let you stealth kill enemies from different positions. When killing an enemy, the player will be presented with a small QuickTime event. If you press the right buttons, it'll result in a silenced kill, but missing the prompt or pressing the wrong buttons will result in an unsilenced kill. There's a few offensive maneuvers as well, such as being given tougher armor and being able to perform a running slide kick or a spinning jump attack. If you get spotted, you can attack an enemy by mashing a button to try and knock them down. You need to knock them down in order to kill them. There is an enemy that can't be attacked from the front, the shield guards with flare guns. There's also the elite guards that can't be knocked down at all and can only be stealth killed after you stun them. There aren't all that many ways to handle enemies in a straight fight. It seems as though the only reason the game gives you an option to fight enemies head-on at all is as an occasional get-out-of-jail-free card for players who mess up. Even if you want to kill every enemy in the game, it is way easier to sneak up on them and kill them than it is to take them head-on, which makes a lot of sense because this is a stealth game. You can't actually fight all the guards, so you need to outsmart them instead, and the game has a few options to make that really fun. There's 2 categories of gadgets that you can unlock, distraction items and attack items, although these names are actually a bit deceiving. These items are mostly all balanced in sync with the gameplay to provide various pros and cons to different playstyles. Distraction items include firecrackers, smoke bombs, flares, a cardboard box, and dusk moths. Firecrackers and flares can be thrown as a distraction, although flares kinda outclass the firecrackers. You can throw a flare, and if an enemy sees it, they will go to investigate. If they aren't facing towards the flare, they won't see it. However, you can use the flare to lure an enemy to the other side of a room and get them well out of your way. The firecracker makes sound, so the guard needs to be in range to hear it. But the radius the sound wave travels is very small, so you can't use it to lure a guard to the other side of a room. It's only really good for getting a guard to turn around, which is made even more pointless since when the guards get suspicious, they'll start searching the area. And when the guards search the area, they'll turn back around anyway. The firecrackers could have seen more uses if the sound radius they created was bigger, or if the firecrackers and the flares both had notable pros and cons that differentiated the two, but they both have an upgrade that lets you detonate them remotely after throwing them. You can carry twice as many firecrackers in your inventory as you can flares, but that hardly makes up the difference. Not to mention, you can use the flares to temporarily immobilize guards with night vision goggles, so they have even more uses than the firecrackers do. The smoke bombs have a few different uses. You can use them as cover if you get spotted, and you can use them to block security lasers. They can also be upgraded with choking powder, so you can use them to temporarily immobilize guards, as long as they aren't wearing a gas mask. The box is exactly what you think it is. You can hide in it Metal Gear style, and upgrading it lets you kill someone and hide their body inside of it. The dusk moths can only be obtained by completing the DLC mission. You can throw bamboo darts to destroy lights, as well as a few other things like circuit boxes that control different electronic security systems. Like in the Splinter Cell games, the real enemy isn't the guards, it's light bulbs. You can destroy the lights to pass through an area in shadow, but smashing a light bulb creates a noise, and if the guard hears it, they will become suspicious. But the dusk moths let you temporarily put out a light without arousing suspicion. This is also helpful for temporarily dealing with lights that can't be destroyed. You can even throw them at guards to temporarily stun them as well. Attack items consist of spike mines, Hisamo terror darts, caltrops, ravenous insects, and fungal spores. A spike mine does exactly what it sounds like it does. If a guard steps on it, spikes will impale them, killing them quietly. It also makes noise when thrown until you get the upgrade for it. If a guard sees it being thrown in front of them, they'll destroy it, and if they see another guard get impaled, they'll become terrified. Terrifying a guard will cause them to frenzy, which means they'll begin blind firing in the direction of anything they think is suspicious. This may result in friendly fire, and the guard may end up killing the other guards. This isn't exactly stealthy outside of the technical sense of the term, but it is satisfying to do and helpful for clearing a room full of enemies. Although, even this tactic has its pros and cons. Terrifying a guard will make them harder to deal with. When they see or hear something suspicious, they won't go over to investigate, they'll just blind fire in the direction of the distraction. Also, when a guard is terrified, they'll break away from their patrol and just start wandering around the area, shining their flashlight in random directions. Terrifying a guard makes the guard more unpredictable and therefore more dangerous. There's a few ways to terrify a guard, such as hanging a dead body from a chain, but the most straightforward way is to use the Hisamu Tarot Darts. They work the same way as the bamboo darts, except bamboo darts can't hurt the guards. The Hisamu Tarot Darts will cause the guards to frenzy right away, and upgrading it will cause them to shoot themselves after a few seconds. And if another guard sees a guard shoot themselves, they'll become terrified as well, triggering a chain reaction. If used quickly and smartly, a player can hit a guard with this dart, use distractions to trick the frenzied guard into killing all the other guards. Then instead of needing to deal with this last guard yourself, you can just wait for them to shoot themselves. Stuff like this is what I was talking about when I said the game makes outsmarting the guards fun. Ravenous insects are flesh-eating insects that will kill an enemy if you throw them at one, but they'll make a lot of noise as they're being eaten alive. They work basically the same way as the spike mines. Guards will even frenzy the same way when they see someone get killed with them. The key difference is guards may be able to see the spike mine if you throw it at them. Even when you unlock the upgrade that lets you throw it without making any noise, it's still better to throw it in their patrol path and wait for them to step on it. You can throw the ravenous insects directly at an enemy and it will kill them, but doing so results in an unsilenced kill. As long as no one sees the enemy die, killing them with a spike mine is completely silent. So these gadgets have individual pros and cons to their various applications. The fungal spores are another item you can unlock in the DLC. They let you kill guards and booby-trap dead bodies. When you throw fungal spores at a guard, they die suddenly, but the spores growing on their body will make a noise luring nearby guards. When another guard goes over to investigate the body, the spores from the body will be released and kill the guard. It's worth noting that you can technically use spike mines to booby-trap dead bodies too. They won't make a constant noise drawing guards near like the fungal spores will. If you want to booby-trap a body with a spike mine, you need to lay the body somewhere where it'll be seen so a guard will come over to investigate. You can't do the same with ravenous insects. If you don't throw them at an enemy, they'll just disappear, but another use for them is throwing them at an already dead body to hide it away. You can hide bodies in air vents and some hiding spots like dumpsters and closets. If you want to hide a body away but don't have a hiding place nearby, you can throw ravenous insects and they will quietly dissolve the body into nothing, leaving no trace behind. So on top of being a good tool for attacking the guards, this is also a good tool for maintaining stealth. That's what I meant earlier when I said dividing the gadgets into attack items and distraction items was kind of deceiving. The caltrops and the cardboard box are particular examples of this point. It doesn't make a lot of sense to label the cardboard box as a distraction item, because its main function is to let you slip past enemies without arousing suspicion. Also, it doesn't make any sense to label the caltrops as attack items because you can't use them to kill guards. Caltrops are spikes that you can throw on the floor. If an enemy steps on them, it immobilizes them temporarily. They're basically like Lego bricks that work on people wearing shoes. They're also one of the least useful gadgets in the game. It honestly feels like they're mostly here because they're a popular ninja tool, and that's it. They aren't bad, but compared to the others, they're much more situational. They're really only useful in specific instances or in conjunction with other gadgets. Like if you smash a light and you want to stop a guard from coming over to investigate. But in those instances, you're usually better off smashing the light than hiding and waiting for the guard to finish investigating the area. Another example is one level where the game gives you an optional objective to drop a chandelier onto patrolling guards. Getting the timing right is a little tricky. You need to line up the time it takes for both guards to walk under the chandelier with the time it takes to throw the bamboo dart and for the chandelier to fall and hit the ground. If you throw some caltrops on the ground, it makes getting the timing much easier. Outside of specific instances like that, the caltrops don't have all that much general use. You can only carry a maximum of 2 different gadgets at a time. By default, it's 1 attack item and 1 distraction item. So you're probably better off using that limited space to carry the ones that you'll likely use more often. I really wish the game would just let players take any 2 gadgets they want, instead of limiting their loadout choices with these arbitrary and deceiving attack and distraction labels. Whenever you start a level, the game first takes you to the upgrade screen, so you can buy upgrades with the points you may have earned in the previous level. After that, you select the equipment you want to bring into the level. What equipment you can bring will depend on what outfit you equip. There's several different outfits that players can unlock and equip to suit different playstyles. Each outfit is balanced in a way that they have pros and cons to them, same as the gadgets. The Path of the Ninja, the Path of the Mark, the Path of Might, the Path of the Hunter, the Path of Silence, the Path of Nightmares, and the Path of Wisdom. The Path of the Ninja is the default outfit, so it's the most evenly balanced. It lets you carry 1 distraction item and 1 attack item. A lot of other outfits, however, seem to be designed to cater to different playstyles. The best outfit for people who want to play the game as stealth perfectionists is the Path of Silence. With this outfit, players can't bring any attack items and they can't carry a sword, so you can't stealth kill enemies. But you can carry 2 different distraction items and you won't trigger some of the electronic security measures like motion sensors. But the bigger thing is how your footsteps won't make any sound when running, so you can run around all you want. The Path of Wisdom is the outfit you get for completing the DLC. You have a limited amount of each gadget that you bring into the level. They can be refilled at checkpoints or by finding a supply cache. The Path of Wisdom lets you carry double the amount of attack and defense items in your inventory. Also, you replenish double the amount of items when you reach a checkpoint. You even knock out enemies instead of killing them. Enemies that are unconscious can be revived if they're found by the other guards. Also, unlike the other outfits, you can't perform takedowns from different positions like above or below. You need to walk up behind them to knock them out. But this gives players the option to dispatch enemies that are in the way without needing to ruin their no-kill run. The Path of Nightmares is for people who enjoy messing with the guards. When wearing this outfit, if a guard discovers a dead body or sees you stealth kill someone, they will become automatically terrified. Causing frenzied guards to shoot each other is a very effective strategy for clearing out an area, so they balance it out by making it so you can't carry any distraction items. The Path of the Hunter is for people who enjoy stealthily killing enemies from the shadows. You can carry 2 different attack items, but no distraction items. Also, you won't have to do the QuickTime event whenever you stealth kill someone. Any stealth kills you do will succeed automatically. This is good for people who don't like the QTE that comes up during stealth kills, but it's also good for people who aren't good at QTEs. I don't think Mark of the Ninja is a particularly hard game, but depending on the player, equipping the different outfits could be seen as something to aid in the difficulty. If you want to play stealthily, but you also hate moving around the levels at a snail's pace, you can wear the Path of Silence outfit. If you don't like the QTEs that pop up during stealth kills, or if you just aren't good at them, you can wear the Path of the Hunter outfit. If you're in an area with a lot of guards, and you're intimidated by their numbers, you can use the Path of Nightmares to thin the herd a little. With the Path of Might outfit, you can carry 1 distraction item and 1 attack item. You also get more health, killing enemies regenerates health, and it's easier to knock down enemies when attacking them directly. There's only 2 reasons why the developers put the Path of Might outfit in the game at all that I can think of. It's either here to allow players to be able to play the game as an action beat-em-up if they want, Or, more than likely, it's here for players that are trying to play it the correct and fun way, but they're either not very good at the game, or they're just genuinely stuck and just want to charge straight through the problem area so they can move on to the next section. Having different outfits with their own pros and cons like this helps appeal to a larger variety of players, acting as assists for players who may be having some trouble with specific parts of the game. This is on top of giving the game plenty of additional replay value and going a long way towards making each player feel like they're playing the kind of ninja they want to be. I personally never use the Path of Might. I also really never use the Path of the Hunter because it's just not how I prefer to play the game. But I'm glad these outfits are here anyway for the players who do or might want to use them. The last outfit is the Path of the Mark. This outfit ties into the powers that the ninja gets through his tattoo. With this outfit equipped, you can use the Mark of Serenity, which allows you to teleport. The teleport works more like a gadget where you have to aim and throw it. You can use this to get to areas that you aren't supposed to in the game. You can climb up walls, but a lot of outside buildings will have the roof hanging over at the top to keep players from progressing that way. In some areas in the game, you can use the teleport skill to get up there. This can be used to quickly skip over whole sections of some of the levels. I also tried going back to some of the earlier levels to test this out, and unless I missed something, they seem to have done a good job at player-proofing the maps. I was never able to use the teleport to glitch my way outside of the play area. You can't carry any distraction items, but you can still carry attack items. But to be honest, this ability to teleport feels so overpowered sometimes that I think I'd be okay if the game didn't let you take any gadgets at all with this outfit. There's two more abilities the game gives you that are explained with the tattoo. One is called Focus, which just allows you to freeze time when aiming. You can use this ability with all outfits except the Path of Wisdom and the Path of Might. Which seems fair since the Path of Wisdom gives you double the amount of gadgets, and the Path of Might refills your health when you kill an enemy. The way it works is you hold down a button to aim, and then Focus Mode is activated and time freezes. You then move the reticle over to where you want to throw something, and press another button to lock on to the target. When you release the focus button, time unfreezes, and the ninja will throw the selected gadgets at the selected targets. This allows you to throw upwards of 3 gadgets at once. If you want, you can throw 3 bamboo darts at 3 different lights. Or you can throw a bamboo dart at a light, throw a smoke bomb at a guard, and throw a spike mine on the ground. Freezing time also offers players a window of reprieve to assess the situation further and come up with a plan. You can't just press the focus button, you need to hold it down. Once you stop holding it down, time moves forward again. This means that the player can't stay there forever, unless they intend to hold down that button forever. Which means when a player is ready to throw something, once they let the focus button go, they're committed to that throw. This knowledge can create a fair amount of tension, leaving room for dynamic planning and decision-making. In this brief window, some players might start to second-guess themselves, or they might start to come up with a better idea. Some throwable gadgets, like the spike mines, will have an arch to them. Others, such as the bamboo darts, will have a straight line and will snap towards specific targets. These gadgets can only be thrown if you lock on to a specific target like a guard or a light. Trying to aim where to throw these kinds of gadgets can be tedious at times. If there's a guard standing in front of a light, it can be tough to get the aiming reticle to lock on to the light. With a controller, you aim using the right thumbstick. You sometimes have to try and move the stick at just the right angle to get it to lock on to the target. This can result in you snapping to the guard instead of the target you want to aim at. The reason this is a problem is because you need to use the stick to aim and then you need to press a button to lock on to the target before you can throw something. But to press the button, you need to let go of the stick and let it snap back into position. This can cause you to switch back to the other target. While this is annoying, it's still technically fair. Because if you're trying to throw something at a target, and someone is standing in front of it, then it would be harder to hit without hitting the guy standing in your way. But that would also be annoying in real life too. Being technically fair doesn't make it enjoyable. It might be better when aiming with the mouse, but I didn't try it. I'm not playing a 2D side-scroller with a mouse and keyboard, not even just to test out the aiming. Thankfully, this only happened to me a few times while I was playing. A more persistent problem with the aiming has to do with the grappling hook. The way it works is when the player is near an anchor point they can grapple to, an icon will appear on screen letting the player know that they can zip over to that anchor point. But you can only zip over to an anchor point if the icon appears, and it will only appear on one anchor point at a time. It seems the way the game determines which anchor point the player can zip to in a given moment is by determining which one is the closest and whether or not it's in range. But if you point the left thumbstick in a random direction, the icon may snap over to the closest anchor point in that direction instead. Again, if the player's in range, because the grappling hook has a limited length. The way the game decides which anchor point the player can zip over to feels inconsistent as a result. This is made even worse by the fact that the left thumbstick is the same one that you use to move your character, and moving your character could cause the icon to snap to a different anchor point if you move out of range. This has resulted in me trying to grapple on to a specific anchor point, but then, just as I press the button to throw the grappling hook, the icon moves to a different location, zipping me over to a different anchor point than the one I wanted. Sometimes this would cause my character to fly straight through a security laser or even a guard's line of sight. To be fair, this only happened to me a few times in the game, specifically in a few areas where there were multiple anchor points bunched up close together. For the most part, movement in Mark of the Ninja is very fluid. Animations chain together very seamlessly as you move through the environment. Being able to climb up a wall, then onto a ceiling, then onto another wall, then zip over to a grappling point feels good when it works. Which it usually does. But every now and again when it doesn't, I'm left sitting there wrestling with the controls, trying to figure out what requirement I'm not meeting in order to get the icon to snap to the anchor point I want. A solution to this problem is on top of the system that's already in place. They should have let players use their focus ability to lock onto an anchor point of their choosing, the same way you lock onto lights with bamboo darts, treating the grappling hook as another gadget essentially. You can free throw your bamboo darts just by pressing a button as well as aiming with focus, so they could do something similar for the grappling hook. If you want to grapple onto an anchor point, you need to meet the requirements the game wants you to. Then you need to either press a button to free throw to the nearest anchor point or go into focus mode to lock on to a specific anchor point you want. From reading the developer commentaries, they originally had a system like this, but it ended up getting removed. I guess because they wanted players to seamlessly chain their grappling hook into the rest of the ninja's movements. It seems they didn't want players to over-rely on the focus ability, but there's no reason that I can see why they couldn't have had both free-throwing and focus aiming for the grappling hook. Think about the possibilities this would open for different playstyles. Imagine going into focus, locking onto a light with a bamboo dart, and then locking onto an anchor point with your grappling hook. So, right after you throw a bamboo dart, the ninja will zip over to the anchor point you selected. Being able to chain the grappling hook in with the other gadgets using focus would have been a good way to push players into taking risks and trying new things, since they would have a more reliable way to escape quickly if something goes wrong. The last ability that the game explains with the tattoo is called the Mark of Farsight. This essentially gives the player the ability to see through walls. At first, I wasn't sure how to feel about this since it completely circumvents the whole fog of war thing, but using it is only ever mandatory in a few locations, like levels where you need to get through areas that are littered with traps. These areas are essentially puzzles, and using the Mark of Farsight is pretty much mandatory for getting through them in a safe manner. at least without relying entirely on luck. On top of the guards, you'll also need to deal with various types of other security measures. According to another piece of developer commentary, the artist who worked on Mark of the Ninja had some challenges with working inside the limits of the level designer's vision for the game. They eventually came up with some ideas for the layout of the levels. After drawing some sketches and showing them to the level designers, they used them as a point of reference for how the game should look. The result is, instead of the levels consisting of a long meandering series of tunnels, hallways, and rooms, they have layouts that seem to make at least some logical sense. For instance, the earlier levels that take place in a modern building have electronic security measures such as motion detectors and lasers. There's two different types of lasers. One type will trigger an alarm if you touch them and activate automatic gun turrets. There's also the larger lasers that will kill you automatically if you touch them. The later levels that take place in the desert temple won't have any lasers. Instead, they'll have traps activated by pressure plates and other mechanisms, as well as explosive traps laid around the area by mercenaries. The only parts of the levels where the architectural layout makes no sense is the challenge rooms, which is fine because that's by design. The challenge rooms are basically optional puzzle rooms. There's one hidden in every level, save for the first and last one. The architecture in the challenge rooms makes no sense at all, but that's because it's implied that these rooms are actually hallucinations. This is mostly an excuse to throw logical architecture with spaces that make sense out the window, so they can just focus on creating interesting puzzles to solve instead. The levels themselves are pretty linear compared to a lot of big-name stealth titles. According to another developer commentary, they wanted Mark of the Ninja to have bigger, more open levels like the Thief games. But apparently this didn't translate over very well into the 2D space because the playtesters would constantly get lost. They could have had players rely on a map to help out with navigation, but having the players constantly go into a menu to look at a map would have disrupted the flow of gameplay. They probably wanted to keep menu juggling to a minimum, so they opted for more straightforward linear levels to navigate through with one or two different ways to move forward instead. And they still included a map just in case some players get lost in some of the larger levels. Of course, this would be easy to overlook because you can't navigate these spaces the same way you would in real life, because we have one extra dimension to contend with. But given the game is set on a 2D plane, they did a good job at making the levels both look and feel intuitive. That is the thing this game is known for in the general consensus, that it's a stealth game set in a 2D plane. This is technically unconventional these days, however, it's not all that remarkable. There are plenty of 2D games with gameplay that's based around stealth, like the original Metal Gear games. Even going all the way back to the original Wolfenstein games that came out back in the 80s. So, why does Mark of the Ninja get so much credit for being a 2D stealth game even though we've had 2D stealth games for decades now? I think it has to do with two things. One is, unlike those other games, Mark of the Ninja is much more multifaceted. The best stealth games have multiple ways of avoiding detection and multiple ways of being detected, while making sure to communicate all of those different gameplay elements clearly to the player. This is what makes Mark of the Ninja stand out from the pack. In Castle Wolfenstein and Metal Gear, if you want to maintain stealth, there's usually only one correct way to accomplish that. Sometimes 2 or 3 if you're lucky. But usually, if you don't play the game exactly the way the designers want you to, you can't maintain a stealthy approach. This can be fun in its own right, because it makes you feel like you're solving a puzzle by hunting for a solution. But this is where Mark of the Ninja differentiates itself. There's several different ways you can approach the average problem. It has a level of versatility that we wouldn't see in the Metal Gear games until they went into the territory of 3D via Metal Gear Solid. The second reason, and likely the more prominent one, is the game takes full advantage of its 2D limitations to enhance the stealth action elements. Mark of the Ninja isn't a good stealth game in spite of the fact that it's 2D. It's a good stealth game because it's also a good 2D platformer. Remember, Mark of the Ninja is just as much a platformer as it is a stealth game. The whole fog of war thing wouldn't have worked if this was a much faster-paced platformer game like Mario. But since this is a slow-paced stealth game, it makes sense to hide important information from the player this way. Likewise, it wouldn't have worked in games like Metal Gear Solid or Splinter Cell either because of the way the camera is handled in those games. Another example is how the guard's field of vision works. Guards have vision cones like in Metal Gear Solid, except it doesn't really work exactly the same. In Metal Gear Solid, the vision cone is an indicator for how far they can see and how wide their field of vision is. But the vision cone isn't actually visible when you look at the guards directly. Instead, you need to look at the Soliton radar in the upper right-hand corner of the screen to see it. Remember, Metal Gear Solid was considered a pretty good-looking game for its time. I imagine having guards walking around with big vision cones consuming much of the screen would have gotten in the way of all that environmental detail. Plus, it probably would have looked kind of awkward because of the isometric angle of the camera. So they pawn off that information to the Soliton radar. I imagine this was also a consideration when developing Mark of the Ninja. If the guards had really small vision cones, then they wouldn't be that much of a threat because their field of view would be very limited. But on the other hand, if you gave them really large vision cones, it would have taken up a lot of the screen and possibly made it hard for players to see anything. So they came up with a pretty clever solution. Excluding the guards wearing night vision goggles, there's actually 2 vision cones for all the guards. The one you see on screen and a second invisible one. The one you see on screen applies to the player if the ninja is in darkness, but the second invisible one is for when they're in the light. This second invisible vision cone is much larger than the first one. So much so that you can get spotted by a guard that isn't even on screen. The reason this is clever is because it pushes the player to behave like a ninja. In Mark of the Ninja, being in the light always feels risky because there may be a guard off-screen looking your way. The game gives you the ability to move the camera with the right thumbstick to scout ahead so you can check for that. But it's better and usually easier to just remember to avoid being in the light as much as physically possible. Another example is jumping. You can actually jump right over the basic guards in this game. This is something that I imagine most players would never even dare to try when they start playing, simply because getting this close to the guards while exposed isn't something you're supposed to do in a stealth game if you can help it. For the basic guard, their field of vision in the dark is extremely small, so if you're in the dark, then you need to get really close in order for them to see you. This is a good demonstration of what I meant when I was saying that this game is as much of a platformer as it is a stealth game. In Mario, you jump over Goombas, in Mark of the Ninja, you jump over guards. Also, you grapple over them and sometimes crawl over them. This is why I think people give so much credit to Mark of the Ninja for being a good 2D stealth game, because it does stuff to enhance the stealth action that wouldn't work if the game was 3D. Here's one more example. All the guards have the same alert phases that you would expect to see in a stealth action game like this. You have guards that patrol the area, and if they see or hear something suspicious, they'll go investigate. If they spot you, they'll go into the alert phase, sound the alarm, and attack you. When the timer hits 0, the alarm will stop, and they'll start searching the area for you. If they don't find anything, they'll go back on patrol. It's standard stuff you've probably seen if you've played any Metal Gear Solid game before. Getting spotted never feels good because it's a stealth game. But in the Metal Gear Solid games, as well as other stealth games, I rarely ever feel as though getting spotted has any real in-game consequences on stealth. I usually plan a route to sneak by a guard and get spotted because I got the timing of one of the patrols wrong. After I get spotted and the alarm sounds, I'll hide and wait for the enemies to go back on patrol. Then I'll sneak past the same guard in the same area as before, with no changes to my strategy. The guard patrolling the area may be walking faster now, which messes with the timing, but that's it. In Mark of the Ninja, guards going back on patrol has a much larger impact on the player. Basic guards have flashlights on their rifles, but they don't use them when on patrol. If you get spotted, hide, and wait for them to go back on patrol, not only will their movement be quicker, but they'll have their guns raised, shining their flashlight around. Before, you could jump right over them if you were in the dark, but not anymore. This makes sneaking past them significantly harder. Or at least it would be if it wasn't for one problem: the checkpointing system. The checkpoints in this game are very generous. Too generous, in fact. If players get spotted or make a mistake, it's easy to pause the game and load the previous checkpoint to undo the mistake. I know this kind of thing is a point of contention for a lot of people. After all, nobody is making you reload the previous checkpoint every time you make a mistake. But I think there is such a thing as being too generous with saving and checkpointing. Over-checkpointing can encourage bad behavior on the player's behalf. If I wanted to, I could run straight through the whole game haphazardly, hoping I get lucky and don't get seen. If I do get spotted, I can just load the last checkpoint. What's the point of having any consequences for getting spotted? Why bother living with those consequences if you can immediately undo them in less than 3 seconds? This pushes players out of the mindset of being a ninja. Instead of sticking to the shadows or outsmarting the guards, you're a player taking advantage of the fact that it's a computer game. I'm not against the game having any checkpoints. I think it's fine to have checkpoints after some of the harder areas, especially in some of the larger levels. But I think the game would have benefited if the developers held back a little. This could have been solved with the addition of more difficulties. You can't choose a difficulty at the start of a level like you can in some other games. The closest this game has to a difficulty selector is the new Game Plus mode. The way you select it in the menu is basically the same way you would select another difficulty anyway. You can carry all your abilities and equipment into this mode as well. New Game Plus does reduce the number of available checkpoints, but not by much. It also adds more fog of war by making it so you can't see anything unless the ninja is facing that direction, essentially giving your character his own vision cone. I'm not really a fan of this. It makes me feel like my guy isn't very perceptive of his surroundings, which is very unlike a ninja. Plus, I don't like having so much of my screen blurred out. The blur from the fog of war in the normal game mode was fine, but this is too much. One thing I do like about it is how it disables specific visual cues like the guards' vision cones. However, it also disables the ability for players to see the radius where their actions will be heard by enemies, which is something that I have mixed feelings on. Also, your character dies in one hit from now on. New Game Plus feels like it's basically a hard mode, and overall, I'd say it's a mixed bag. At least for me. It has some changes I like, and some changes I can't say I'm a fan of. Another thing that the game does that I don't particularly like is some of the optional side objectives. Each level will have 3 optional objectives that you can do. Some of these objectives are fine. Stuff like ring 3 gongs or get through an area in less than a minute. The ones I'm talking about are the ones that ask you to kill people. Kill 5 guards and hide their bodies in dumpsters. Kill 2 guards with a chandelier. Stealth kill all the guards in the catacombs. Other stealth games sometimes have optional objectives like this too. Any stealth perfectionists out there will know this pain. Whenever I boot up a stealth action game for the first time, my thought process going into the game is always the same. I want to try and get through the game and complete as many things as possible without killing anyone if I can help it. You're probably thinking to yourself, but these are optional objectives, right? Technically, yes they are. If you don't want to do them, you don't have to. But the way they're integrated into the game makes them much less optional than they may seem. At the end of every level, the game will take you to a screen to show you your score. This will show you how many guys you killed, how many alarms you raised, and how many enemies you distracted. The game will give you a bonus score if you avoid raising alarms or killing anyone. There's also a distraction bonus and an undetected bonus. The distraction bonus adds an extra 400 points to your score for every enemy you distract. The way the undetected bonus works is a little weird. Basically, it shows how many times you got really close to a guard without being detected. But walking up to a guard from behind or jumping over them doesn't give you the undetected bonus. There's 3 ways that I found to get this bonus. Have a guard walk past you while in a hiding spot, have a guard walk past you while you're dangling just above them, or zip over a guard with your grappling hook. It's weirdly specific and I don't know why. Earning a better score and completing the various side objectives will earn you points called honor. There's a total of 9 honor points that you can earn per completed mission. This is the currency that you'll use to buy upgrades in the upgrade screen. Since you need to do the side objectives to earn the honor points they offer, they aren't actually all that optional. I get why they're here. If you give players all the different outfits and gear right at the start, they'll probably just experiment with some gadgets and playstyles for the first few missions before eventually settling on a loadout they're comfortable with. Then they'll just stick with that for the rest of the game without ever even giving any of the other gear a chance. Not to mention you risk overwhelming players with too much stuff at once. So the developers included these side objectives to push the players into mixing up their playstyle by dangling some juicy rewards in front of them. That way, the players will be more likely to at least try all the different things the developers worked so hard to put into the game. From the perspective of the designers, this makes complete sense. But from the perspective of a player, this is a mixed bag. On one hand, these side objectives do push players into mixing up their playstyle. But on the other hand, they also indirectly punish players who refuse to do them. Completing these side objectives is the only way to unlock the alternate outfits. You can't buy them in the same way you purchase upgrades from the shop. Not only that, but you need to do them in order to get the honor points they offer. And you need honor points to unlock new techniques and gear. You could just not do the optional objective and replay the level later when you need the honor points to unlock something you want. When you complete a side objective once, you never have to do it again. But to unlock everything in the upgrade screen, you need to pretty much get all the honor points in all the levels. So since you need to do the side objectives eventually anyway, you may as well do them as soon as possible. This was exactly my thought process throughout my whole first playthrough. Anytime I was given a side objective I didn't want to do because it conflicted with my preferred playstyle, I sucked it up and did it anyway, because I wanted to obtain all the stuff in the upgrade menu. You may as well do all the side objectives even if you don't want to, if only to buy more upgrades. Then once you obtain all the upgrades, you can replay the level the way you actually want to play it with all the new gear. Some of the side objectives are fine, specifically the ones that don't directly interfere with specific playstyles. But some of them, like asking the players to have every dog in the level pick up their scent, come across more as busy work than anything. On the flip side, the side objectives that do fall in line with the ways players already prefer to play don't add all that much to the experience. Certain side objectives, like reaching an area without being detected, won't mean anything to players who are already trying to play as stealthily as possible, because they were probably going to play through the level that way anyway. To be clear, when it says to stay undetected, that doesn't mean you can't stealth kill enemies or use distraction items. You just can't get spotted. Just think about how bizarre this is for a second. One of the side objectives in this stealth game is to be stealthy. I mean, what? What the fuck happened there? In fact, now that I think about it as I'm recording this, maybe having players unlock upgrades through a scoreboard wasn't such a good idea in general. The game doesn't have a leaderboard or anything like that, so you can't compete with players for the top score. Your score isn't saved anywhere either, so you can't play through a level later to try and top your own high score. The only reason the score system is even here is so players can earn honor points to use in the upgrade menu. The way the scoreboard is laid out is actually really misleading when you look at it. It only shows the score you get for distractions, not sounding any alarms, not killing anybody, and remaining undetected. You wouldn't know this just from looking at the scoreboard, but the game also scores kills, hiding bodies, and scaring enemies into shooting other enemies. One of the game's major strengths is that it's a really compelling ninja power fantasy. It's flexible enough to let you play as the kind of ninja you want to be. The way this scoreboard is laid out gets in the way of that, because it makes it feel like you didn't do a very good job if you didn't play as a stealth perfectionist with no kills, even though this also runs contrary to the side objectives. The game tells me to kill a bunch of people to complete a side objective, and when I do that, it tells me that I got a lower score because of it. I got a lower score because I did exactly what the game told me to do, even though I didn't want to do it in the first place. But I did it anyway because I needed the honor points to purchase the gliding ability. Like I said, the scoreboard is only here so players can get points to buy things in the upgrade menu. You can easily beat the game during your first playthrough, get all the honor points, and unlock all the upgrades on your first attempt at all the levels. But the way the scoreboard is designed is so head-scratchingly counterintuitive to the rest of the game, I can only assume that it was implemented sometime really early on in development and didn't see much change. The side objectives aren't as counterintuitively designed as the leaderboard, but it's enough that they feel almost tacked on. Being technically optional doesn't mean anything when they still don't add or sometimes take away from the experience. Because if you choose not to do them, you'll also be choosing to rob yourself of currency that can be used to purchase numerous useful upgrades. Push the players into mixing up their playstyle, but not in a way that indirectly punishes them for refusing to go along with being railroaded into a playstyle that they don't want to sign up for. Another group of side objectives is to collect 3 scrolls hidden in each level. The collectible scrolls and artifacts do a much better job at pushing players into taking risks and trying new things. A lot of games, especially open-world games these days, have notes scattered around the map with optional flavor text to try and add some lore to the world. These notes will usually have almost nothing to do with what's actually happening. And if you want to read them, you need to stop playing the game and go into a menu. I don't like it when games jerk me out of the gameplay to watch cutscenes, but I usually tolerate it anyway. Even if the story isn't interesting, I still at least want to have some context for what I'm doing. Taking me out of the gameplay to plop me into a menu so I can read a note that has almost nothing to do with what I'm actually doing isn't enjoyable at all. Which is why in most games that have these, I usually never bother to even read them. Mark of the Ninja forgoes a menu altogether. After you pick up a scroll, some voice audio will automatically play. You don't need to stop playing the game to read it, and it doesn't drag you into a menu. It's only a small thing, but it's worth commending seeing as how so many games fail to do this right. The game will allow you to keep playing while the audio plays in the background, so as not to interrupt the flow of gameplay.
A history of the Hisomu clan, as written by its masters. 500 men lie, vanquished before Tetsuji takes off his blindfold.
The artifacts are just cat statues that are scattered around the level. They give you more score if you pick them up, but that's it. Some of the artifacts and scrolls are in some obscure areas of the map, and some of them are placed in some precarious locations that are hard to get to. Sometimes to get to them, you'll be required to get past or find your way around a tricky obstacle. You don't need to collect them, but when I was playing the game, I did anyway. Unlike the other side objectives, I actually wanted to pick them all up, because retrieving them didn't require me to change my preferred playstyle. It feels good to outsmart the guards by getting past them and swiping these artifacts from right under their nose. I wish the levels had more of these scattered around, but honestly, the game does a pretty good job at pushing players into trying new tactics by itself without the need for side objectives. Not just with the different gear and outfits either. The mechanical pacing of the levels is actually pretty good. Each new level adds a new challenge to keep the gameplay feeling somewhat fresh. Whether it be a new enemy type, a new environmental hazard, or a tricky new obstacle, never sticking to one thing for too long. This kind of thing is a much better way to encourage players to experiment and try new things out. The first level in the game introduces the basics of stealth and how to play the game. The second level introduces the lasers. Then there's a section where you need to get through multiple confined spaces fast while avoiding guards as the lights get turned on one at a time. The third level introduces dogs and the shield guards. It also has another multi-layered area with the largest abundance of guards in the game. Then after that, there's a section where you need to follow a target to a location without being seen. This is the only area in the whole game where getting spotted is an automatic game over. Directly after that is the only section where the alarm will automatically sound no matter what you do, putting every guard on high alert as you make your escape. The fourth level introduces motion detectors, and it has one of the more open areas in the game. It gives you a whole building with multiple floors to explore in order to complete various objectives and side objectives. The fifth level introduces snipers and has the closest thing to a boss fight that you can find in the game. It's one of the very few areas where the player is required to kill someone in order to progress through the game. Level 6 throws the players a curveball by introducing lightning storms. Every time the lightning flashes, it briefly lights up the player. The players can listen for the thunder, which acts as a warning that the lightning is about to flash, so they can have time to hide. In real life, lightning comes before the thunder in a rainstorm. Apparently, the developers wanted the game world to feel realistic and grounded in some ways, but not at the expense of the gameplay. They made the decision early on in development that ensuring the gameplay is fun should always come first. So they broke the rules of physics by having the thunder come first, then the lightning, to give the players a heads up that they should hide and make the area feel a little more fair. As far as I'm concerned, they made completely the right decision. Also, level 6 introduces poisonous green gas clouds. The gas isn't instantly lethal. When you go into the cloud, a meter will appear over the ninja's head. Once the meter runs out, you start taking damage. In another developer commentary, they express their desire not to over-tutorialize the players. In the beginning of the game, there's a text window that will pop up to tell you how to use the grappling hook, but other things like poison gas have no such interruptions. The game simply has some dialogue that plays to make sure players know it exists, and that's it. If you look through any of my other videos, you'll notice that one of my biggest pet peeves is how some games handle tutorializing players. It's nice to see a game that knows how to introduce players to its gameplay while also treating them like they have a functioning brain. I wish more developers would follow this example. Level 7 has even more gas, as well as guards wearing gas masks and night vision goggles. It also has moving platforms, and platforms that crumble away over bottomless pits. It's worth noting that there's a few of these crumbling platforms at the end of level 6. That way, players will know what they are before they're dangling over bottomless pits. After level 7, the game doesn't use the poison gas or the moving platforms ever again. It's typical for developers to use the same assets and ideas over and over again, remixed throughout the whole game. Instead, when the developers felt like the gas and moving platforms saw enough use, they stopped using them. This is something you'll see throughout the game, and I think is one of the major reasons the pacing feels so good. The game always knows when to abandon old ideas for new ones. The ending of level 7 has a section where the player is locked in a room while a timer counts down. They have to hide from the guards as they search the room and fill it with gas. The guards will be accompanied by dogs and will even search some hiding places like inside vents. Level 8 introduces the elite guards. Both level 8 and 9 have the most thorough mixture of each different guard type. Level 9 is a bit of a narrative climax. The next 2 levels take place in a desert and have sandstorms which limit the player's field of view. In place of security lasers, they have a wide variety of traps, including noisemaker traps, spike traps, blow dart traps, and explosive traps. Some of the hiding places will be booby-trapped, and some hiding places will crumble away after you leave them. The Mark of Farsight is extremely useful for getting through these areas. Level 10 is one of the game's more open levels and has multiple objectives scattered all around it. This combined with the sandstorm makes it easy to feel lost and out of your depth a lot of the time, which I think works, at least for this one level. If the whole game was like this, it would be very frustrating and tedious. You're probably going to want to consult your map a few times to make sure you're on the right track. Level 11 introduces the most dangerous enemies in the game. The stalkers can move around the environment the same way you can. Up until then, the one advantage you had over the guards was mobility. The stalkers take that advantage away. They can crawl up walls and through air vents. They even have a grappling hook that they can use to latch on to the same grapple points you can. Their suits have night vision goggles and motion sensors installed in them. If you try to sneak up on them, they'll become suspicious right away. In other words, you can't stealth kill them like other enemies, which I guess doesn't matter that much here because you don't really have a sword for this level anyway. The 11th level is the only level in the game where you don't get to choose your gear before starting. You don't get any gadgets at all this time. All you have is the Mark of Serenity, the Mark of Farsight, and your bamboo darts. All of this makes level 11 the most difficult level in the game, especially near the end when the game has you going through a narrow cave filled with stalkers and traps. It forces you to get into close proximity with them. The only way you can kill them here is by tricking them into running into the various traps. This is followed up by the final level in the game and the only level where the mechanical pacing starts to falter. It isn't a bad level, but it's not anywhere near as challenging as the previous one, which makes it feel like a bit of an anticlimax mechanically. There's an area at the start where you need to get past a train in a subway tunnel without getting hit. There's also these light puzzles, but they don't do much to raise the stakes any higher. This level has the stalkers mixed in with the other enemy types. I suspect it was done this way for the sake of the story. There's actually a story reason why these two enemy types are working together that I'm not going to spoil. I see what they were going for in terms of the story. But still, the normal guards aren't anywhere near as tricky to deal with at this point in the game. Plus, after the subway bit, you get your gear and sword back anyway. So it's not all that hard just to kill them or sneak around them. The next level is technically the actual final level, but it's really more of an epilogue. It's also where the most impressive display of the art team's talent can be seen. I'm not going to spoil the story, but overall it's alright. The only real surprise in the story is a big twist that's revealed in the epilogue, but combined with the art style and the excellent voice acting, it was enough to keep me interested. The only thing about the story I have any kind of complaints about is how some of the scrolls contain vital story information. Most of the scrolls have lore that's designed to enrich the world, but they don't have all that much to do with what's going on in the story directly, except for 2 scrolls in the desert levels that can be easily missed, which provide vital story context. There's 2 endings that the players can choose from. Those 2 scrolls have information that could change a player's outlook on the events of the game, which could factor into which ending they'll go for. The only reason this isn't a bigger deal than it could have been is because it's really easy to see both endings back to back. The ending you get isn't determined by your playstyle or choices you make throughout the game or anything like that. It's literally make your character walk to the left of the screen or the right of the screen. Once you get one of the endings and sit through the credits, the game will kick you back to the main menu. From there, just go back to the level selection screen and select the epilogue, then play through it again to get the other ending. It only takes like 3 or 4 minutes to get through. I wasn't blown away by the story overall, but I did like that twist and the 2 endings. They both left me thinking about the various repercussions and moral implications they may have, even after I stopped playing, which is about the highest praise I could offer. They both also managed to wrap up the story in a complete and satisfying way. And that's Mark of the Ninja. Perhaps its most notable accomplishment is how it does things with the stealth action genre that could only work in a 2D game. But it's also a very well-made ninja power fantasy. When it's not railroading you out of that fantasy with its scoreboard or optional objectives that are really only optional if you don't want new gadgets or upgrades. Which, let's face it, is something nearly all players will want. The movement feels nice and fluid most of the time, but sometimes when using your grappling hook it can feel a little frustrating. It has some good challenge and mechanical pacing, despite the overabundance of checkpoints. Not all the gadgets are as useful as they could be. Some of them are kind of overly situational, but they help enhance the ninja power fantasy for people who want to use them. I kinda wish they put throwing stars in the game as well, just for the hell of it. I also wish they gave you the ability to aim your grappling hook using focus. It's by no means perfect, but it has a pleasing art style and the gameplay is solid. There's room for improvement, but at the same time, I don't really want a sequel to Mark of the Ninja. Both endings were satisfying wrap-ups to the story, and a direct sequel would kind of ruin that. Klei Entertainment put out quite a few updates for the game after it was released, so there's always the possibility that they'll update the game with new content. Stranger things have happened, but I seriously doubt they will. I'm pretty sure that once they released the remastered version of the game, they wanted to move on to other things. Regardless of the handful of issues, I'm glad that Klei were able to get over the hurdles in development to make a game with a somewhat common premise executed so uncommonly well. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I finally got the video done. Man, that took me longer than I hoped it would. I was hoping to have the video done like 1 or 2 months out from my last video, but that didn't happen. A bunch of setbacks ended up screwing me over. I almost had the video done sometime in June, but I ended up getting like a corrupted save file with my project. Like halfway through editing this video, halfway through editing it, my project save file ended up getting corrupted. My computer turned itself off. It turns out it was overheating because, it was hot outside, and the thermal paste inside the computer was all dried up. One of the times when it turned itself off was right after I hit the little manual save button on my project when I was editing. Right after I hit the little manual save button, it turned itself right off. And then when I turned it on again, the whole project was gone. I think the save file got corrupted or something. So I had to restart from the beginning. I had to edit the whole thing all over again. It was a huge pain in the ass. By the time July rolled around, I got back to where I was, but things ended up slowing down because honestly, I didn't feel very creative or inspired during July. July was a pretty crappy month for me overall. On the 4th of July, my toilet broke. I had to call a plumber to fix it, but there weren't any plumbers in business on the 4th of July because it was a holiday, so I had to wait until the 5th. I had to wait until the next day to call them in. In the meantime, I had to, pee in my sink. They came in and they fixed the toilet, but they made a hell of a mess in my bathroom. So I had to clean that. I had to clean my bathroom, and to be honest, it was a little bit overdue since I last cleaned my bathroom, so yeah, I had to do that. Then I ended up getting sick. I caught the flu. I was sick for like 2 weeks. And during that time, I honestly didn't feel like editing. I didn't feel like doing anything productive at all. Yeah, honestly, it's been a sucktastic month. July has not been great. It's been a big pain in the dick. And that, have all that combined with the fact that I'm having some family issues right now. Yeah, it hasn't been a great month. July's kind of been a load of crap. I haven't been feeling, creative or inspired at all, so I haven't, it took me a little while to get the editing done. But it's done now. Yeah, the video's done, and God, Jesus, I hope the bad times are behind me. I am currently looking into getting a new gaming PC right now. I got a guy, helping me out with that. Since I have a new position at work, I'm making a little bit of extra money and I'm setting some aside for a new computer. That way I'll be able to make videos on any game that I want. There's a bunch of games that I want to make videos on that I just don't have the horsepower to right now with my current computer, so I'm trying to get that sorted out. In the meantime, I think I have maybe one more video in the tank, one more short game review before I swap PCs. I'll look into that. We'll see where that goes. And then when I get my new PC, I can finally get back to making some big analysis videos. Anyway, yeah, that's about all I have to say right now. I should probably go ahead and wrap this up. I actually have to go to bed very soon because I have to get up for work tomorrow. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Oh! If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.